Service Teardown HP 800 G9 Small Form Factor Desktop PC. How to replace the access panel. Removal. Remove the flathead thumb screw securing the access panel to the chassis. Slide the top cover directly back and lift to remove the access panel. Replacement. Align the access panel with the edges of the chassis and lower the panel onto the chassis. Slide the access panel forward until the latch snaps in place. Replace the thumb screw to secure the access panel to the chassis. How to replace the optical drive. Before you begin, remove the access panel. Removal. Remove both the SATA cable and power cable connecting the optical drive to the motherboard. Push in the green lever on the optical drive to release it from the drive cage and slide it forward to release the drive. If you are installing a new optical drive, pull the green drive release latch off the optical drive. Insert a paper clip into the force eject hole on the optical drive to eject the drive tray. Pry and push out the tabs securing the bezel to the optical drive. Replacement. To install a new optical drive, press the old optical drive bezel onto the optical drive until tabs are secure. Carefully slide the optical drive back into the drive bay. Fit the two small pins on the green drive release latch into the corresponding holes on the optical drive to secure latch. Slide the optical drive in the slot on the front bezel until the green lever clicks into place. Reconnect the SATA and power cable at the rear of the drive. How to replace the front bezel dust filter bezel. Before you begin, remove the access panel and optical drive. Removal. Unlatch the three side tabs of the front bezel and rotate the bezel away from the PC. To replace the dust filter bezel, pry the two bezels apart until they separate. Replacement. If installing a new dust filter bezel, press and snap the dust filter bezel onto the front bezel until all edges are flush. Align the hooked tabs on the right side of the bezel over the tabs, and then rotate and press the left side of the bezel until the tabs snap over their posts. How to replace the RTC battery. Before you begin, remove the access panel, optical drive, front bezel. Rotate the hard drive cage and disconnect power supply. Removal. Carefully push in the metal tab on the motherboard until the RTC battery is released. Lift and remove. Replacement. Place the RTC battery into the battery slot on the motherboard and push down until it is secured by the metal tab. How to replace the speaker. Before you begin, remove the access panel, optical drive, front bezel, rotate the hard drive cage, and disconnect power supply. Removal. Disconnect speaker cable from the motherboard and remove it from the routing tab on the hard drive cage. Gently release the three rubber pegs from the notches on the side of the speaker and remove. Replacement. Place the speaker between the rubber pegs and push each of the pegs into the corresponding notch on the speaker to secure it to the case. Secure the cable back into the routing tab on the cage. Reconnect the speaker cable to the motherboard. How to replace the SD card reader. Before you begin, remove the access panel, optical drive, front bezel, rotate the hard drive cage, and disconnect power supply. Removal. Gently disconnect the cable connecting the card reader module to the motherboard. Remove the two P1 Phillips head screws securing the card reader to the motherboard. Slide it forward and lift it off the alignment pins. Remove the two P1 Phillips head screws on the bottom of the card reader module to remove the cover that is secured to the card reader. Slide the cover off to remove SD card reader. Replacement. Slide the card reader into the cover along the notches on the inside of the cover. Replace the two P1 Phillips head screws that secure the cover to the card reader. Align the card reader module back on the alignment pins on the motherboard. Replace the two P1 Phillips head screws that secure the card reader to the motherboard. Carefully reconnect the card reader cable to both the card reader and the motherboard. How to replace the fan duct. Before you begin, remove the access panel, optical drive, front bezel, rotate the hard drive cage, and disconnect the power supply. Removal. Remove the power supply cable from the routing channel. Lift the plastic flap with the arrow into the up position to uncover part of the fan duct. Pull the two plastic tabs on either side of the fan shroud in the direction of the corresponding arrow. Lift the shroud up to remove. Replacement. Place the fan shroud over the heatsink and motherboard, and then gently push down to secure. Lower the plastic flap back down. Route the power supply cable into the routing channel. How to replace the M.2 SSD memory. Before you begin, remove the access panel, optical drive, front bezel, rotate the hard drive cage, remove the fan duct, and disconnect power supply. Removal. Gently push down on each of the four metal bars on the heatsink to release them. Lift up and remove the heatsink from the top of the M.2 SSD. Remove one small P1 Phillips head screw securing the end of the M.2 SSD to the case to release the SSD. Gently remove the SSD from the tray to remove. Repeat this process for the second M.2 SSD memory. Replacement. Place the M.2 SSD on the tray and thermal pad and slide into place on the motherboard socket. Replace the small P1 Phillips head screw to secure the SSD to the motherboard. Replace the heatsink on top of the SSD in the correct notches and push each of the four metal bars into place to lock the heatsink to the SSD. Repeat this process for the second M.2 SSD memory. How to replace the graphics card. Before you begin, remove access panel and disconnect the power supply. Removal. Disconnect the graphics card from any other components. Lift the latch for the expansion card retaining bracket. Gently pull the graphics card straight up to remove from the motherboard GPU socket. Replacement. Gently place the graphics card back into the slot on the motherboard, making sure the side cover is lined up correctly on the case. Lift the latch for the expansion card retaining bracket back into place. Carefully reconnect any components you removed from the graphics card. How to replace the option board DisplayPort module. Before you begin, remove the access panel, optical drive, front bezel, rotate the hard drive cage, remove the fan duct, processor fan, and disconnect power supply. Removal. Carefully remove the two cables connecting the board to the graphics card. Remove the two small P1 Phillips head screws securing the board to the motherboard. Lift to remove. Replacement. Align the board on the pins on the motherboard. Replace the two small P1 Phillips head screws to secure the board to the motherboard. Carefully reconnect the two cables connecting the board to the graphics card. Place the retention back in place over the cable and board. How to replace the power supply. Before you begin, remove the access panel, optical drive, front bezel, and rotate the hard drive cage. Removal. Disconnect the three different power cables connected to the motherboard. Remove the cables from the routing channels. Remove the three flathead screws securing power supply to the back of the case. Push down on the metal tab with a green arrow on bottom of case in front of power supply to release it. Slide forward. Lift and remove the power supply. Replacement. Place the power supply back in the case and slide directly back until it locks into place behind the green arrow and is aligned with the holes on back of the case. Replace the 3 flathead screws to secure the power supply to the back of the case, noting the correct color cables. Place back into routing channels as necessary. Reconnect the 3 power cables back to their positions on the motherboard. How to replace the system memory. Before you begin, remove the access panel, optical drive, front bezel, rotate the hard drive cage, and disconnect power supply. Removal. Release the 2 plastic tabs on each side of the DDR4 slot on the motherboard to release the memory module. Carefully lift the memory module up to remove it from the case. Replacement. Carefully place the memory module into the furthest DDR4 slot from the processor fan. Align the notch on the bottom of the memory module with the DDR4 slot. Gently push down until both tabs on the sides of the memory module lock into place. How to replace the processor fan. Before you begin, remove the access panel, optical drive, front bezel, fan duct, and disconnect power supply. Removal. Disconnect the power cable for the processor fan from the motherboard. Loosen the 4 captive flathead screws securing the processor fan to the motherboard. Note: due to the adhesive quality of the thermal grease located between the heatsink and processor components, it may be necessary to move the heatsink from side to side to detach it from the motherboard. Lift and remove. Replacement. Note: before replacing the heatsink, the thermal grease should be replaced. The thermal grease should be replaced every time the processor fan is removed. Carefully place the process fan over the processor, making sure the power cable is on the correct side and that the screws line up with the holes on the motherboard. Secure the 4 flathead screws to secure the processor fan to the motherboard. Carefully reconnect the processor fan power cable back into place on the motherboard. How to replace the CPU. Before you begin, remove the access panel, optical drive, front bezel, power supply, fan duct, and processor fan. Removal. Push the long locking bar on the left side of the CPU down and to the side to release it. Lift the cover up. Carefully grasp the CPU on both sides and lift out to remove. Replacement. Carefully place the CPU into the CPU slot on the motherboard. Make sure the arrow in the corner of the CPU matches the small arrow on the motherboard CPU slot. Push down the locking bar until the CPU is secure in the slot. Slide the locking bar into the locked position. How to replace the wireless LAN board. Before you begin, remove the access panel, optical drive, front bezel, rotate the hard drive cage, remove the fan duct, and disconnect power supply. Removal. Remove the P1 Phillips head screw securing the wireless LAN board to the motherboard. Remove the plastic cover by sliding it off. Carefully use tweezers to release both the left and right pin cables from the wireless LAN board. Caution: use care when disconnecting the wireless antenna cable from the wireless LAN board. A damaged cable or connector can degrade performance. Carefully grasp the edge of the wireless LAN board and slide it out to remove. Replacement. Slot the wireless antenna module into the WLAN socket on the motherboard. Carefully use tweezers to reattach the 2-pin cables to the wireless LAN board. Replace the plastic cover onto the end of the wireless LAN board. Replace the P1 Phillips head screw to secure the wireless LAN board to the motherboard. How to replace the motherboard. Before you begin, remove the access panel, optical drive, front bezel, hard drive cage, M.2 SSD, graphics card, SD card reader, fan shroud, processor fan, CPU, wireless LAN board, and disconnect power supply. Removal. Disconnect the speaker cable from motherboard. Remove the 7 flathead screws securing the motherboard to the case. Carefully lift and remove the motherboard from the case. Replacement. Carefully place the motherboard into the case and align the exterior ports with the cutouts. Replace the 7 flathead screws to secure the motherboard to the case. Reconnect the speaker cable to the motherboard. How to remove the wireless LAN antennas. Before you begin, remove access panel, front bezel, optical drive, fan duct, processor fan, wireless LAN board, and disconnect power supply. Removal. Remove the rear antenna cable from the guide clips on the chassis. Press the release tab on the rear antenna cover and rotate cover off the chassis. Remove the Torx T15 screw that secures the rear wireless LAN antenna to the chassis. Lift and remove the antenna while guiding the cable through the hole in the chassis. Repeat those same steps to remove the front wireless LAN antenna on the front of the hard drive cage. Replacement. Guide the rear wireless LAN antenna cable through the hole in the chassis. Replace the rear antenna on the chassis, ensuring the guide pin is aligned with the cutout in the antenna. Replace the Torx T15 screw that secures the wireless antenna to the chassis. Align the tabs on the rear wireless antenna cover with the holes on the chassis and rotate the cover against the chassis until it snaps into place. Replace the rear antenna cable into the guide clips on the chassis. Repeat these steps to replace the front wireless LAN antenna. Click the Playlists tab in YouTube to find HP videos in other languages. And search our channel to find official HP support videos.